Yeah, it's kind of humid. It's kind of humid where I am too. It's okay. We're starting the show early today. Here we are live. We are live.
Are we live?
We're live. Or is it Memorex? I don't know. Always takes a minute for it to open. And here we are. I can see for miles and miles. Okay, got Rick Marotta here, everybody.
That was a Larry Carlton song that we did.
That's a what song?
Larry Carlton.
Oh. Song. You played with Larry Carlton?
Did.
I know you did. Oh, see, here I am telling you to keep the sound down, and I had my sound up. So we already got a whole bunch of folks watching, Rick. You know, I will say if there's it is a little dark behind you. I don't. Oh, there we go. That's much better as you get closer to the camera.
Get close, it's not dark. It's yeah. Technology is. You know, if I step back, it's gonna get dark. Oh, if I come up, it gets dark.
So, folks, live right now, Rick Marotta from his home in Martha's Vineyard.
It's gonna get dark. Oh, if I come up, it gets
dark. Oh, okay, there we go. Now, and there's that delay we were talking about. Who do we got watching? Let's see if we got any questions. Are you watching it on your?
Trying. I don't know what I'm doing.
Carlos Guzman, Los in the house. Suzanne Morissette Cruz says hi to both of us. Hi, Suzanne. Boy, there's a lot of people watching. There's Lucy. Wow. It's amazing. It looks great. Well, that's great, Suzanne. It's amazing how many people.
Saying hello to everybody that logs on.
Amazing how many people are tuned in to see you, Rick. I'd have never thought that, but I don't know. What do I know?
Glad I finally get to do this. It's been very difficult. You know, I've been trying to get on this show for a while.
Well, I've been back,
your assistant hasn't been returning my calls, and
I've had a backlog of guests. You know, I've been trying to figure out a time to get you in, but you know how it goes. You know how it goes. So what do you want to talk? I'm asking you what you want to talk about, but I know you're really thinking, you're looking for me to ask you what we want to talk about. So what I'd like to start by talking about is, for the people that might not know this, you started playing drums at age 19, correct?
I think everybody knows that.
Everybody knows that? How many people know that? Let's see a show of hands of people that knew that. Okay, so assuming everybody knows that, how old were you? And I can't believe I don't even know the answer to this myself. How old were you when you did your first session? Like your first kind of, big kind of session? Or not even big, but session. Like how many?
There's a lot of guys that know a lot of these answers really well. And I just never paid that much attention. But I can tell you this. It was probably, I was 20. And of course, it was Spinoza who called me, got me on this R&B session, and the big R&B station in New York was WLIB. And I remember playing on this record in the studio in New York, and there were these girl singers, and it was an R&B record, of course. It was it was an R&B record, and obviously for WLA, because that was the R&B station. It's all we listened to, and that and WPLJ, I think, and I did that session. I wish I could remember the name of the band, but I remember driving down the street about a week later, seriously, a week later, and I'm listening to the radio, and on the radio comes that record.
Wow.
I was like, I was that gets you hooked right away.
Yeah. Wow. And that would have been, if you were 20, that would have been, without giving away your age, the late 60s ish,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
So the scene was in New York was definitely happening, but it really hadn't like taken off yet to the level that it was at in the 70s when you were working like all the time.
The recording scene.
The recording scene.
Uh,
I suppose by the late 60s it's going pretty strong.
It was. There were a lot of recordings going on in the 60s, but there were different kind of recordings in New York. I mean, and Los Angeles too. I hadn't been to LA yet, but there were a lot of studio guys in LA. You know, I was thinking about them yesterday, thinking about some of the guys we don't talk about that often. And for example, like John Guerin, my God,
yeah,
what a great drummer and what an amazing amount of stuff he did, and really quality stuff.
Yeah, yep. And a guy like Steve Schaefer too, who I think about as West Coast TV film guy. Yeah.
Earl Palmer.
Yeah.
But then in New York, there was Bernard Purdy, Gary Chester. I can't remember all the names. Guys who came before me, Billy Lavonia. And we owed them a lot. They sort of opened the door for all of this stuff.
So fast forward to the early 70s, you were starting to work pretty regularly with mostly a lot of jingles, that sort of thing, records, obviously. Like what was the scene like at that time?
Late 60s, early 70s were a lot of jingles during the day. You'd get up, you'd do jingles starting at 9, 10 in the morning, sometimes earlier. They would be booked for an hour with a possible 20, actually, is what they used to say. So if you went over, you'd get 20 minutes overtime, whatever that was. And then you'd do a couple of those in the morning, and then usually around 1 o'clock, they would start record dates, and then you would do 2 or 3 of those in a day. You could be working on 3 different albums in one day. You could be working on 2 albums one day. They could book you out for the day for a record. It was what we knew. It was basically all we knew.
And for you, and just so people watching, like for example, Joanne Cassidy and Jeremy Driesen, our friends on the Vineyard, who are watching right now. So, but for you, it's like David Spinoza recommended you or had you come in on a session he was involved in, and that just sort of, you got to know producers, and it just started happening for you pretty much, right? You started getting the calls. And
yeah, at that time, the way it worked, I tell a lot of people this, there was no thought process going on in my brain about it. It was, you did a gig and somebody heard you on that gig. And then they would ask you to play on their record or in their band. And that's the way it worked. So you started out in one band. So I started out in a local band with Spinoza and Jack DeGrazy and those guys I grew up with, who were basically teaching me music in their basements and stuff. And then we go out and we do a gig. And then we would we lived in Westchester, so we'd be working in the Bronx, Long Island, Brooklyn, New York City. And then you'd go to a gig, and some other band would be playing, like we'd open the show, and then you'd have like the Rich Kids or the Vagrants or another band at that time, contemporary band at that time, and they would hear you play, and then they'd say to the guitar player or to the bass player or to me or somebody, "Hey man, you're great. You sound really good. Would you like to work on our record, or would you like to do a couple of gigs with us?" And That's how it worked back then. I don't know how it. I look at the business now and I think to myself, these kids, it's just really different. It's really different. So I'll give you an example. My close friends, actually my ex-wife and her husband, their son Will Bakula has this great band. He's from Los Angeles. He's probably 22, and he's in Oregon or Washington, and he put this band together, and it's incredibly good. And they just work together. They just work and work and work. And I just, I just hope that he keeps that band together, and they just go up and up and up. Because I said to Chelsea, I said, geez, Chelsea, that band is so good. Everybody in the band individually is really good. I hope they can keep the band together, because I'm still thinking about the old days when if you had a band that was that good, it was hard to keep it together because somebody else was trying to poach somebody from your band.
Sure. Yeah.
Like the bass player in Will Bakula's band is phenomenally good. I mean, he's the best new bass player I've heard in a really long time. And he's a very serious player. He plays electric, but he's trained upright player, and he's really good. And I said to Chelsea, I said, geez, I hope, I can't remember his name now, but I just said, I hope he can stay focused on the band, because people are going to be trying. I can't, I could see Chick Corea, for example, coming in and saying, hey,
yeah,
we'd love to have you play in the band.
But wouldn't you say nowadays, though, that there's more of a, by the way, I just want to say hello, because I want you to know that Joe Vitale and Chris Parker are watching.
Oh, great.
And I just said
now
now
I don't want to talk anymore. Why did you have to tell me?
And Stanley Sheldon, your bandmate.
What is wrong with you?
I'm just trying to make you even more nervous, Ricky. That's how I work. You know me.
I'm humbled.
I'm twisting the knife.
I'm not nervous. There's nothing I like more than talking about myself. But I'm humbled by those guys, Vitale and Chris Parker, and God knows who else is on here.
Jeremy Stacy.
Oh, forget it. Goodbye. I'm hanging up.
Yeah, and I said Stanley Sheldon is watching, and
Stanley's my bandmate.
I know. Yeah, he's your bandmate. And I want to talk about Stanley in a second, because I think people would be interested to know you guys are bandmates going back a long time with Ronan, but also with Peter Frampton. But what I was going to say is just what we were just talking about when you're saying nervous about him getting poached by like a Chick Corea or somebody. I get the impression now, though, that unless you're in the Dave Matthews Band, which isn't even really a young band anymore, you can't call those guys young, but it's kind of like there's the mentality is really more of a it's not so much about being in a band as it was when you were coming up, about 30 or 40 years later when I was coming up, maybe more than 40 years later, I don't know. But you wanted to be in a band, but it's kind of like, and I only say that because you see a lot of people out there just doing their own thing, playing cover songs on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I just didn't know if you get any vibe from that, any feeling about that as far as like the idea of being in a band. Is that kind of a lost art in your mind, do you think? Or
I'll tell you, it's funny you should ask that question. I don't know how interesting this is. I started out playing with the guys I grew up with. And then I got poached and I got into this band called Brethren. And that was a band. And I was playing in an R&B band, like 10-piece band. Obvious horn section, playing all Joe Tex, Sam and Dave, James Brown, just all R&B music. And then I'm in this 4-piece, actually 3-piece band. Started out 3-piece band that started out to be the Vagrants in New York City, and put everything into that band. I mean, it changed my life. It changed my perception of music. I come from R&B, and that's exactly what happened. We were doing a gig, and we played in our band, and then Brethren played, but they were the Vagrants at the time. They didn't have the band Brethren. I actually named the band Brethren, or came up with the name. And then the next band that played, if I remember correctly, was the Strawberry Alarm Clock. So when we played, the guys in the Vagrants were standing there, and there was a drummer from Paris. I think his name is Roger. He was the drummer from the Vagrants, and the original guitar player on the Vagrants was Leslie West. So Leslie left to start Mountain with Felix Pappalardi. Felix Pappalardi? Yes, Felix Pappalardi.
Yeah.
And they replaced him with this guy, Tommy Cosgrove. Tommy, Stu Woods, and I formed Brethren. They asked me to play in the band. And we then went to California and we did an album. And Dr. John played keyboards on the album and wrote the liner notes. And it was a phenomenally good band. Certainly one of the best guitar player singers I ever worked with. I mean, it was an incredible band. And we could not keep our shit together. It just, no matter, we had management that wanted us, we had premier talent behind us. That's how I met Peter Frampton. Then I met Stanley because we were on the road with Humble Pie and Free, and Brethren was a bill. And we did the whole East Coast. I remember we would go down to Florida, and every night we're all sort of the same, coming up at the same time. So they said, okay, you guys, we're all with premier talent. And they'd say, okay, one night Brethren opens, another night Free opens, another night Humble Pie opens. And, you know, there's 3 incredibly good bands, and all really young guys. We're all 21, 22 at the time. And that's where I met Frampton.
Okay.
Who then, but the point I was trying to make is, when that band broke up, because of all of the stuff I went through in that band emotionally, because I was very immature, you know, I wasn't, I was sheltered, and I think I was just immature, still immature. But I remember when the band broke up, I remember saying, because my dad had said to me, he said, Rick, you don't ever want to be part of something where the chain, you're in a chain, and there's a weak link in that chain, because you're only as strong as that link. And no matter what we did, I mean, I fucking remember putting Tommy up against the wall. It was just, come on, like, let's get our shit together. And it was just this, if someone doesn't want success in a band, that was my experience. The point of the whole story is, that's what made me say, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was really early on. And the way that I got out of it was between Dave Spinoza and, you know, don't always really talk about this. On the second Brethren album, we hired a percussionist in New York named Ralph McDonald. First album we did in LA, second album we did at Electric Ladyland. So I'd see, it's like Hendrix was in every day. He'd come in and, hey, what's going on, guys? You know, it was totally different scene. And so we hired Ralph McDonald to play percussion.
Wow. I didn't know that.
And Ralph said to me, hey, man, you're coming with me. I remember he literally said that. He goes, we just locked, you know, as soon as we started playing, we locked. And he goes, come with me. This is really early on. So, I mean, literally it's Brethren's second album. We still were together. And the band broke up after that. And I remember Ralph called me and he said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And you know what? I stayed away from bands. I only was in bands Ralph got me into Roberta Flack's band right there, right away. He called me one day. That whole insane thing, that was getting into that band was crazy. He literally was out on the road and called me. I was in my apartment in New York City, and he called me and he goes, I pick up the phone and he goes, get to the airport. What? I said, get to the airport right now. Don't ask me any questions. Just get to the airport and get a plot. Just book a flight to Newport News, Virginia. We're playing the Hampton Coliseum, the Hampton Coliseum in Newport News, Virginia. And so I grabbed the trap case and went. In those days, I just got in a cab and went to LaGuardia. Got on the first flight I could get to Hampton to Newport News, Hampton, whatever airport it was. And I remember I get out. I don't know if I told you the story before, but I get out of I get there, I get to the airport, and I get a cab, and I say to the guy, I've got to go to the Coliseum, the Hampton Coliseum. Oh, you're going to a show? I said, I think I am. So he drives, and it's a circular place. And I told him the story, and he goes, don't worry, we'll get it. So he pulls
you told me this is great. Yeah.
He pulls the car around, and he runs into some door. He goes, just wait here. Runs into some door. Guy comes running back and says, wrong door. He goes, let's go. He drives to the other door. And I went to pay him, and I go, well, where are you going? He goes, I don't know. I go, come on, you want to go to the gig? So we both went into the place. And when I walked into the Coliseum, it was full. I don't know if there were 15 or 18,000 people in the place, but it's like playing the Forum or something like that.
Yeah.
The place was packed. She had already started. The drums weren't set up on stage. And I look at Ralph, and he's looking at me like I'm standing there with my trap case, and he's going, get up here. So I get up on stage while she's doing like some really quiet, it's Roberta Flack.
Yeah, Killing Me Softly or something.
And no, not Killing Me Softly. He hadn't done that yet. It was like last time I ever I saw your face, or first time I ever saw whatever. And she's doing something like that, and but very quiet. It might have been just a little quiet thing. And I see all the guys in the band are looking at me, and they're all laughing. And I'm putting the kit together.
It's unbelievable. It's your worst nightmare.
No, and I'm putting the kit together, and I look, and it's the band was Jerry Jamont was the bass player at the time, and it was Cornell Dupree and Eric Gale both, Ralph McDonald, Richard T.
Yeah. Yep. Chris Parker was just asking if T was in the band.
Who?
If Richard T was in the band, and Eric Gale and the gang.
Of course, that was the band. It was the original Stuff band.
Yeah.
And so, by the middle of the second song, I just start sliding in, and I remember Eric Gale and Ralph just said, "Look at us." That's it. But I knew I was such a huge Roberta fan that I knew Reverend Lee. I knew the one with that Howard Johnson had done the tuba arrangement to Gone Away, I think the name of the song was. I can't remember. All I know is I knew pretty much all the songs from listening. Back then I used to listen to everything. So that started that, and the way it came about was Chris, who played drums, who produced the Stuff album. I'm so embarrassed that I'm forgetting this. Maybe Chris can tell us if he's on here. If he writes, let me know.
Yeah, Jack Douglas is on as well. Let's see. Hi, Jack. Let's see if Chris got that. You're asking who produced that Stuff record or produced Stuff Records?
Yeah, produced Stuff. It was a drummer. It was.
Maybe Jack knows. I remember your early days in the studio. Great groove and unique vocals. Jack, that's Jack Douglas saying that. He could be exaggerating about the vocals, though, I think. He's just being honest. Oh, Chris is saying Herbie Lavelle.
Herbie Lavelle. Thanks, Chris. Herbie Lavelle. So what happened was Herbie Lavelle was the drummer in the band. And the reason I got the call from the airport was because when they got to the airport to go to Newport News, Herb, who was an incredibly great guy, really nice guy, and a great drummer, he punched a sky cap and got arrested at the airport. That's how I got that gig.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Now Chris is saying Tommy the Puma. I could. Um,
Oh
so,
man.
so that's how it happened. Is Herb got arrested, and that's when Ralph called me, and then they hired me to do the gig. And Herbie didn't have any real problems because he was doing a lot of sessions in New York at the time, but it was towards the last years of his really working a lot.
Yeah. See, that's what's wrong with the business now. There's not enough people punching each other. It's become a little too pedestrian or something. But I want to jump back too, because, and this is my own personal selfishness, not selfishness. Hold it, Jack's got a comment here. He's saying he sang or grunted while he played. Jay Messina and I used to solo it out and crack up.
You know, I was going to call Jay Messina today, actually, and tell him I was doing this because I wanted him to come on. Because here's what I think. Here's what a suggestion I'd like to make. I think that you should start talking to guys like Jack Douglas and like Jay Messina, the guys that were
absolutely.
They were sort of they were the Pied Pipers. They were the guys
Eddie Kramer, yeah.
Jack was in the studio when I did John Lennon's record. Jack was producing and went through the whole thing. I still remember the day I went in and I walked in with an SIR t-shirt, and I was early because I was really hyped to do John Lennon's record. And I walked in, and John Lennon and Jack were huddled at the board, and I'm just standing next to them, and I have an SIR t-shirt on. For those of you who don't know, SIR was a rental and delivery company in New York City and in LA and in Nashville. They did everything at the time. Yeah. And so I had this SIR
video instrument rentals. Yeah.
And I had the SIR t-shirt on, and John is talking to Jack about something, and he looks and says, yeah. Then they're going, and I'm just standing there, you know, like 5 feet away, 10 feet away. And John finally turns and he goes, can we help you? You can just leave whatever it is in there. And then Jack said, John, that's Rick Marotta. He's the drummer on this section. It's one of my great, you know. Yeah. Well, thanks, Jack.
That's Rick Marotta. He's the drummer in the session.
He's gonna be one of the many drummers on the session.
I'd love to get Jack, yeah, and Jay Messina and Eddie Kramer and any of these guys that would be. Jack would be amazing.
So many stories. I mean, Eddie Kramer produced the second Brethren album, so he was there in the trenches with me, and that's when I met Ralph McDonald.
And Jack, if you're still listening, Jack is, I mean, the John Lennon stuff, the early Aerosmith records that are just like masterpiece records, you know, that stand up almost 50 years later.
You know, he mentioned Jay Messina. Jay is another great New York engineer, and we all came up at the same time. I remember working with Jack a lot at the record plant, I'm pretty sure, and Jay at the record plant. And those guys were they were like studio guys. They were like us, you know, they could be doing a jingle. But then Jack and Jay kind of got so busy, they became more part of a band. When they did a project, they were members of the band. As producers and engineers.
Yeah.
They come up as engineers, but they're musical guys, they're producers. And then there was where we were really lucky, because we're playing with guys in the room. I always felt incredibly privileged to be playing in the room with guys like Hugh McCracken and Spinoza and Chuck Rainey and Tony Levin and Anthony Jackson and Richard T. and Ralph, you know, on and on and on. I saw, I was thinking about the studio scene. I actually was talking to Jerry about it yesterday. And I said, because Jerry called me, we were talking. And I said to him, Jerry, are you doing anything? Because I was just concerned because of this horrible, horrible situation we're in, that nobody's working. And I just wondered, you know, I talked to Jerry a lot, but had he been working? And he goes, Jerry very well. It's like not yes or no. It's work. What are you talking about? What work? What kind of work? Work? Like, do you mean studio sessions? Because there's certainly no like. I said, Jerry, I know, but he's so gifted and he's so equipped. Jerry is. Yeah. You call Jerry and you go, Jerry, I need a drum part. Well, everybody's like this now. Guys you're not in a room. We started talking about what Jerry and I started saying. We're never in a room. He goes, when was the last time you were in a room with a bunch of musicians playing a song? And honestly, probably when I booked the session, probably on a kid's record or something that I've been working on, and not that often. And it is fun, but you never get to really do it anymore. I mean, some guys do. I guess. But it's really hitting hard. Although I just spoke to Harry McCarthy a little while ago, who said all of a sudden, you had Harry on
a couple weeks ago,
with Jeff Jonas, and Harry said, "It's busy. Studio stuff opened up in Nashville again.
Yeah,
he's bringing instruments to." He's bringing instruments to the studio, drums. He said Garth Brooks is doing a record down there. I don't know if Keith Urban is doing something, but they're going into the studio now. Nashville seems to be the last bastion of live recording. Yeah. For the most part. I mean, there's certainly other things, but it's kind of the norm there. And he said that they started up working there again. Personally, I think it's early. I wouldn't want to be in a recording studio, but
it seems like it would be too soon. But different places are doing it differently, and hopefully it's not going to cause a spike or a resurgence. So hopefully,
fingers crossed. It really is a horrible thing what's going on. I don't have to tell everybody, don't have to remind everybody.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's a tough time.
But and I'm going to jump back for one quick second, because I just sort of touched on this at the beginning when we talked about how you started playing at age 19, which is pretty, all the drummers or any musician out there watching, I think would think that's, later than a lot of people start. And you just kind of had an inkling to want to play the drums, right? I mean, you just kind of.
I didn't know anything else. I didn't have anything else going on.
And never took any lessons, right? You just started playing by ear, listening to records and what were some of the records that you were kind of listening to at that time that you were getting influenced by, like the bands or the drummers from that time?
I was listening mostly to R&B stuff.
Yeah.
Like it was Sam and Dave, it was Otis Redding, just that whole genre, the Temptations, the Four Tops. That was what I was listening to all the time. Mm-hmm. Then a person that we don't talk about as often as I think we should is Andy Newmark.
Andy Newmark, yeah. I was thinking about Andy.
Andy was playing in Spinoza's band. There were several drummers in the bands that we were both in, but Andy Newmark was there. A couple of guys got drafted and sent away into the Army, and there were 4 or 5. There were some really good drummers in Westchester where I grew up. But Newmark, I became really good friends with Newmark when I first started playing. And he turned me on to the Young Rascals and to Vanilla Fudge. So for me, it was a whole other thing. And he would say, listen to Dino Danelli, and you'd look at Andy Newmark play, and Andy would kind of copy. Andy sits sort of rigid upright like this, and he kind
traditional
of
grip.
traditional grip, and he would copy the looks, Dino Danelli look, and
he was a hero, drum hero. Dino, he was a superstar.
Absolutely. And Andy used to cop all those fills, and he would try to show me stuff, and so that was influential, and that's what I started to listen to. And then we went to see, I went to the Capitol Theater once to see the Vanilla Fudge. So it was Vanilla Fudge, and here was the band. It was,
And I have a question in the queue from Chris Parker to talk about the groove in The Hour That the Morning Comes, James Taylor song. So, but we're just going to table that question for a minute.
The bill at the Capitol Theater was Charles Lloyd and Vanilla Fudge.
Wow.
How do you put that together? Yeah. It made no sense to me, and yet it was phenomenal, because I think Jack DeJohnette was playing with Charles Lloyd at the time. Not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it was DeJohnette, because I think it was the first time I ever saw Jack DeJohnette play. And I thought, wow, what is this guy playing? And that was when I was introduced to sort of quote unquote free music.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I was I had taken a stab at with Dave Liebman and Annette Peacock some couple of years later, and I realized free jazz kind of music was not where my brain was, because I was always looking for that thing where you can play the groove, and I never really understood where it came in that what quote unquote free music.
Yeah. Do you want to talk for a second about the groove? I know that we're kind of jumping around, but before the question goes away and we don't see it again, Chris Parker, the great Chris Parker.
Oh, Chris,
our good friend, asking about the groove that you came up with for Hour That the Morning Comes, James Taylor song.
I will talk about. I'll answer anything that Chris wants to know, but I want everybody to know how much of an influence Chris has been on me as well, because I've known him since he was just a kid, an upstart coming up in New York, and he and Will used to play together all the time.
Yeah.
So Hour That the Morning Comes, I consider it I like that groove. I like that it's recognized somehow, because some people found out about it, maybe because I told them about it. But we went in the studio. We were working on an album, Dad Loves His Work, James Taylor album. And James came into the room, and the way we worked at that time, it was Waddy Wachtel, me, Dan Dugmore, the guys in Ronin, basically. Yeah. Stanley, I don't think was there, but it was either Lee Sklar or Bob Blau, probably Leland. And, that was it. Billy Payne or somebody, or Don Grolnick, whose birthday it was just recently, and I miss him. I can't tell you how many times I think about this guy. So anyway, to answer Chris's question, so I'm thinking James came out and played that guitar part for us to learn the song. That was what it was. We didn't write, it wasn't written. They had just James would come out and play something. And James is an incredible guitar player, and he plays very differently. So if you listen to the guitar part, you're going to hear him playing that finger picking style, that picking style of his, with all these really incredible voicings and all this kind of stuff. So James played it, and if you listen to the record, just listen to his guitar part. Okay. So while he played that guitar part, I just sat there and I could hear this sort of, it wasn't like bar one, it wasn't 4-bar groove or 8-bar groove, or it wasn't a 2-bar groove, a 1-bar groove or 2-bar. It was like an 8-bar or a 16-bar groove. I just heard this whole line of movement.
Yeah.
That to me, I felt was going to stay in the groove. I hope this is making sense to Chris, because it's starting to not make sense to me. But as it went along, instead of playing just boom, boom, bam, boom, 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 bam, I had listened to what he played. That's what I was thinking. So I'm thinking, I'm going to play that. And it was complete opposite of what I had been told, what I had gravitated towards playing wise, which was simple groove, don't play melody drums. Melody drums was something I was trying to, I didn't like melody drums. Personal taste. I felt it was more like something, I don't want to name any names in rock and roll bands, but there were guys that played melody drums. And so I couldn't help it. I just had this melody in my head that I wanted to play that was almost, I hate to use this word, contrapuntal to James's thing. So it kind of worked with him and against him. So I kept feeling like this was happening the whole time I was playing. And then we did a take. And then they said, let's try it again. I think we did 2 or 3 takes, and everybody turned around and went, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And I was over the moon, because I'm figuring they're just not going to go for this, right? And I was totally over the moon. And our really good friend, Danny Korchmar, who we all know and love dearly, Danny comes in, Cooch, as we know him.
Producer, right.
And he says, this is a great song. You guys have to redo it because the drums are all over the fucking place. And you know, I gotta say that I was sat around going, at the time, my basic disposition was not nice. At that time, I was working a lot, and I was just, I didn't want people telling me what to do and blah, blah, blah. So I just said, okay. I just didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to cause any problems. So I went, okay. And we recut it. And I tried really straight. Just played. Boom. And Cooch, by the way, at this time, now Cooch is playing guitar on the thing. So we started all over again from scratch. And Cooch and Waddy are playing guitar, and I'm playing, straight ahead drums, and playing like I thought a James Taylor song would be played, because I didn't invent the stuff on the James Taylor stuff. That was Russ Kunkel. Russ Kunkel invented the approach to playing on a James Taylor record on those, on Fire and Rain and those records where Russell was just, like, I listened to those records, I go, that's how you play. That's how you play dynamics. So anyway, I was really depressed. And Peter Asher, God bless him, because James bought into it. James said,
that's right. Peter was the producer.
James went, we better cut it again. Yeah, you're right. The drums are, because James, I don't know. I don't know if he really understood it or liked the part. I don't understand it. But he said, to Cooch, let's do that. And everybody else was really supportive. I remember Waddy's a very boom, boom. Stanley Sheldon will tell you, boom, 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 boom kind of guy. But you know what? You better play it right with Waddy, because he can hear if you're off a fucking hair. He can tell if the feel is not right. He can tell where the time is. He's crazy with that stuff. So Waddy was into it. Waddy was like, he can understand it. Waddy understood it. So once I knew that Waddy liked it, because he used to really do a lot of directing with bands we were in. And the end of the story is we recut it, I don't know, 2 or 3 takes the other way. And they said, yeah, this is great. We're good. And I went home feeling really depressed. And I find out Peter Asher walked in and said, you guys are out of your mind. We're going back to Marotta's original drum part. We're keeping that. That's on the record, period. He did it, and James acquiesced. James said, okay, yeah, you're right. It sounds really great. And that's how that happened. But the approach to it, and back to Chris, I hope I answered you. You know, Chris, one of the things I thought about was I had been listening to Keltner and this little dance that he did. You know, Chris and I go way back, so he knows the way I play. Chris and I have played together, and so we're very much like this. Chris knows that I'm a sort of funky, knuckle down and dirty kind of player. I like to play from the bottom up. And I always think, when I was listening to Keltner, I was thinking Keltner likes to play from the top down. And so I went, I'm going to play.
Good way to describe it. Yeah.
I'm going to play sort of inside out. I'm going to go top down, bottom up. And that was really what I was just trying to make some crazy kind of thing out of it that worked. But I made sure that it was repetitive. I played these certain little things that were inspired by James Taylor's guitar part, because he would play them. I would play either again, counter to them or with them, and I would repeat them so that the arc of the groove, instead of it going like this, the arc of the groove went like this, and then like this. But in the middle of that thing, the thing was going like this. So
great tune.
I hope
great
that,
part.
Chris, I hope that explains what I was thinking, because it was not anything that you or half the guys here wouldn't do or come up with. It was just thinking about the part and then letting it flow. I mean, it was more like learning the vocal to a song or the melody to a song and just playing it.
You know, what's interesting, talking about Chris and all the guys in New York, we've been doing this for 45 minutes and we haven't even mentioned Steve Gadd, which is good. Because who wants to mention? Who wants to? Yeah, exactly. Somebody's been knocking at my door. Give me just 1 second, Rick. I want to just let somebody in who wants to say hello. Whoa! What do you know?
Oh.
Speak of the devil.
Oh, you know. It's over. Game is over. He's not in.
This happened very last minute. Your old friend wanted to say hello and maybe torment you a little bit.
Guy, talk about poaching. This guy can't let me do anything. He's always shows up.
I'm texting John. He said he's in the middle of a story. I'm going, it's a long. How long is this story going on? And then he's telling me to be patient.
Rick, you know how impatient he is. Talk about impatient.
Oh.
I just knew what you'd be doing if the tables were turned, if you were waiting.
Yeah.
No, Steve, if I knew you were waiting, I'd still be in the middle of that story right now.
I know. I had to be very careful when I texted John.
I tried to jump ahead.
I'm trying to get him to move it along. You know what I mean?
So,
you know, it's like.
So for people who don't know or live under a rock, Steve and I go back a really long time. And so honestly, one of my big influences is right there, Steve. But I don't mean it in a way like, you know, you listen to Bernard Purdy or you listen to Peter Erskine or you listen to Jim Keller or any of those guys. I'm talking about we would be literally playing together in a band, on a session or in a band, and he would influence me this way. He would turn to me and say, stop playing that. don't play it like that. Play it like this. Be a drummer. Don't be a bum, which is what you are, let's face it.
What? and here we are, and look where it got you, man.
Yeah, you're in your house in the vineyard.
Uh,
I just wanted to say hello, man.
no, this is, you know what? I was saying to John, you know what would be really great? I'd rather than do this. I'd rather do it like, do a few with Steve, like 20 or 30 of them with Steve. And then let's just do one, me, you, and Steve.
I see where this is going. I see. And
You guys, you remember, I was trying to do this when I was still at Zildjian. I was trying to, before I knew about Zoom, maybe it didn't exist, but I would get on the phone with you guys or at Groove Night after a rehearsal, and we'd be in catering for an hour with you guys telling stories. And I used to say, guys, we got to figure out a way to record this shit or get these stories out to people, because this is like, it's some of the funniest stuff, but it's also some heavy stuff too.
well, we had some good times. We've had some laughs too, man. A lot of laughs.
Yeah.
Steve,
And
Steve,
stories about I remember stories you told me about Harry McCarthy.
wait, Harry just told me one about you the other day.
Okay, well but we'll talk about that another time. We'll catch
No,
up.
this is a good one. It's really quick. You
All
were
right,
doing a session, and Harry went in and not a session. You were on the road, and the next day you went out to play, and Harry had changed your heads, and he said, I'll never forget it. I changed the heads, and
he changed the spring on my pedal.
no, he's changed. Yes, it was either the spring on your pedal or it was the strainer. It was the.
I think it was the snare
The
wires.
strainer.
Yeah.
The strainer had about 4 snares on it.
It sounded just the way you liked it.
But it
He
was
goes,
so good.
So I saw it, and I put a new snare strainer on the bottom end, and he starts playing. He goes, Harry, did you do something? Yeah, the snares were broken, and I put new snare. Why'd you do that? Well, just drum maintenance. And you said to him, guys like me and Rick don't need drum maintenance.
It's right, man. They start to sound good after you play them for a while.
Yes.
Guys like me and Rick don't need. Yeah.
So how you doing good now at the Vineyard? You must be
So
good.
much better than Miami.
Yeah.
I can see you're doing well. It looks like you haven't. Did you lose your razor?
I got to shave. Yeah,
I
I got to shave. I'm not letting it go though. I just let it go too many days. I gotta do it.
So I
It
have
looks
to
fun.
say, for people that don't know this, Steve and I really do go way back, and we're family. It's family to me. We don't talk about drums all the time. We talk about all of the
We
stuff.
talk about everything, but my real name is Steve Gadd Marotta. We're brothers, man. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, somebody sent me a podcast of a comedian yesterday, just yesterday, and this friend of mine from LA said, "Rick, did you ever hear of this comic?" And I don't remember his name now, but he's a very popular comic, and this guy's son was listening to him, and in the middle, he just sent this podcast to me. He said, "Just go to the 15 of this podcast." And I go to the podcast because he's telling me to do it, and he's a friend of mine, and I don't want to not do it. And I go there, and guy starts talking about playing. He's a drummer. I mean, he's a comic, and he's not doing any gigs, so he's practicing drums all the time. And he goes, and I'm playing to the song, and I thought it was this Jim Croce song. And I'm listening to this great drum track, and I'm thinking, yeah, Steve Gadd sounds really good on this track. Then he goes, but I find out I don't think it was the great Steve Gadd. I think it was this other guy named, Rick Marotta?
Well, and it turned out to be the great Rick Marotta on that trumpet.
And I just think, I think how much Steve haunts me everywhere I go. The great Steve Gadd.
Oh.
I miss you, man. I wish that we could hang out.
I wish we could too. Man.
I just want to double check something. You have your.
I got mine downstairs.
I just stopped using the mask for Zoom meetings. I was using it for. I don't even think Mike Landau is taking calls. He won't speak to anyone on the phone.
An ounce of prevention.
See, we should next time we do this, we should actually come up with an agenda, what we're going to talk about, and Steve and I will try to get through 7 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, without just going off somewhere and laughing about something else.
It'll never happen. We can try it though. We should try it, but I can't.
You know, a couple of things people should know. I've known Steve a really, really, really long time. And the first time I saw Steve play, first time I heard about Steve was from Spinoza. They had done a gig. I'll make this really quick. They had done a gig. The band, I wasn't in the band. I wasn't even playing drums at the time. Dave came back from this gig they had done in like Rochester, I think, where they were playing as the band Giant or Soul, whatever, Soul Company, whatever the band was that we were in. It was a R&B band. They're playing. And Steve, who was it that was the headliner?
Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye. So Marvin Gaye is going to be playing, and they're going to use the band that
Spinoza's band.
Yes.
Spinoza was the front man. He wasn't even playing guitar, man.
No, but he had to play guitar. He had to play guitar because they brought charts for Marvin Gaye. They had to play guitar. Dave had to play guitar because the other guitar player couldn't read, and Dave could read. So Dave played guitar for Marvin Gaye, but the trumpet player, Lenny Colangelo, in the band was so intimidated. He said to David, will you please take the trumpet and just pretend to play it, because I'm afraid I can't read.
They were afraid, and Marvin was so nice to these guys.
Oh,
it was David's band, and David taught him all the parts, all the horn parts and everything. None of them read, and Marvin's conductor, his MD wanted those guys to play the charts, you know.
Oh.
And Marvin rehearsed. Marvin was really nice, man. It was. But that's when I first met David, man. It was cool.
Well, Dave told me, funny. Dave said to me, we went there, and whoever was playing drums with Dave in the band at that time, I'm sure it was not Andy Newmark, probably Billy Reed or one of those guys.
Right.
They said, we've got to bring this local kid in. So Steve shows up with his father. Father takes Steve to the gig, came with him to the gig. Goes up and he was, you know, Steve's a lot older than me. So a
lot.
But he brought his dad, and Dave, I remember Dave came back and said, Rick, this guy came in and didn't play. He read everything from top to bottom, not one mistake. He said it was the best drummer he ever heard. And I said, who was it? He said, his name's Steve Gadd. I said, we'll never hear about that guy again.
So wait a second. So then I go to New York, because that happened. That happened when I was in college.
You were in
that was in the 60s. So that then after I finished college and I go in the Army for 3 years, I go to New York, and I'm doing, you know, I started getting called to do some jingles, and we were doing one, and David was on the session, and all of a sudden, man, he remembered that we had met before. Meanwhile, he's one of the busiest session guys in town. He's producing, he had a record deal as an artist, and Rick grew up with him. Rick's in his band, you know,
Yeah.
and Rick is his go-to guy. And I'm just coming out of the army and coming to New York, you know, and my background is more, you know, jazz and I did orchestra in school, but I didn't know, I hadn't been around pop or people that really, you know, knew about the pocket, you know what I mean? And I went and heard, after David and I reconnected and realized that we had met before, you know, he said he was playing downtown at a club, and the band was Rick, Stu Woods, and Kenny Asher, and David. And I went down and heard this band, and man, it was so on fire, you know, not in like the groove was just deep, and the
Yeah.
crowd was just with them, you know what I mean? It was just so nice it was great to be involved in that kind of shared energy, you know what I mean? And the music was great, and it made me want to be able to do that stuff, you know. And it's, you know, it looks simple, but when you try to do it, I mean, it really took you. It took a lot. You had to really want it and love it and mean it, no matter how simple it was. And that's what I you know, and that was what Rick inspired me to do, you know what I mean? And so I devoted, you know, that's a lot of, I mean, I'm devoted to the groove, no matter what kind of music. And it's because of hearing Rick and David in that band. I remember Marvin Stamm was in the crowd that night, and he came up and played, you know. Marvin's like an old jazz guy, and was like, but I mean, you know, no matter what kind of musician was in the club, the groove was so strong, it didn't make any difference what kind of music they played, you know. So
That's very nice of you to say, and I appreciate it. Two things I
and
want to.
then you took me and played the Meters and introduced me to Keltner, because I asked, you know, remember you started playing me stuff, and we became you know, brothers immediately, and our passion and the thing we share is the love of great music, and there's nothing like the groove, you know. There's nothing like that, man. So
I remember, yes, and I remember that I got a call from Spinoza and from Mike Manieri and then Tony Levitt, all saying, you got to meet this guy. You and Gadd you got to meet each other. You guys are really going to get along. You're going to really like each other. And we did. But I remember it was so intimidating to me because I had seen, now my story for seeing Steve was, I didn't see him live first. I saw him play. There was a video, a concert, Chuck Mangione concert. Gat Mangione, I think, was playing keyboards. Chuck Mangione was playing trumpet. I think Tony might have been playing bass.
yeah, it was Friends in Love, probably Friends in Love.
It was like
with an orchestra, right?
yeah. Oh my God. And I watched Steve playing groove, and he wasn't playing like, he played his own. He was like, it sounded like a guy who invented his own way of playing a groove. And I was like, holy shit. How do you even think about that? How do you even think about coming up with that kind of stuff? And then I met him, and I realized he wasn't really that smart. It was a lot of accidents happened when he played. And
Yeah, what you meant, I mean, it's like, it's, you know, I appear to be a certain way, but people that know me really know.
It's all a happy
Full
accident.
story.
You know, this is fun, and I want to say I watched the Steve Gadd interview that John did when I did not butt in, and the highlight for me of that interview was when Steve told a joke about a dead monkey, and I hear Earl in the background yelling, "That's terrible!" That was the highlight of the interview. That's terrible.
He got reprimanded. Well, you guys should tell a quick story, if it's possible to tell a quick story or a long story about some of the stuff you did together. I know, like the Plastic Ono band,
Yeah.
or other stuff that you guys have done. I don't know.
There are so many stories. There were stories where we're playing in the Plastic Ono band and Steve wasn't playing. He was just not playing. There was a point where we were in Japan with the Plastic Ono band. I look over and Ton Grolnick, God love him, is having coronary on stage. He's flailing his hands like this, one arm up in the airplane, and I look over and Mike Brecker was off. We're supposed to be playing. He's off stage, and Mike Brecker used to practice a lot in a corner. Remember, Steve, where Mike would always be playing scales or something. It sounded like Coltrane meets Michael Brecker in a corner. He's playing. So you can see him off stage. He's practicing in a corner somewhere. And Randy is also supposed to be playing a part. Randy's playing organ like this on the other side of the stage. And in Japan, organ was on one side of the stage, piano was on the other side. So it's trying to get everybody to play their parts. And he was laughing so hard. Steve was laughing so hard that he wasn't playing. It was just me playing it up, yelling, "Play, please, play something."
Grolnick is going to the Brecker brothers. And you know what I remember, what they were doing, they weren't practicing. They were sitting, they didn't have to play, so they were sitting at the organ. And all Grolnick could hear was them noodling in his fucking monitor. And he's going, God, I think he ended up taking the monitor and throwing it off.
So you really want to hear great stories. This is going to be the Gadd and Marotta stories. They're just stupid, crazy, laugh like you can't believe stories, and they're just treasures for me because they're things that I get to remember and think about even if I get them wrong. And I couldn't be luckier than to have lived through that period and with these guys, playing with all of these guys and Steve and Chris and the Brecker brothers and Grolnick and Spinoza. Those days are so, and Tropez. I mean, when we did Tropez's records, they were, and the live gigs.
We had a lot of fun.
Man. And it wasn't always a walk in the park. You know, there were times, one of the great things, and I was really thankful for it, was I always looked up to Steve because I always felt like, you know, he didn't deserve it really that much, but I always felt he was much better.
You always felt he was much better what?
Than me.
Oh, than you.
Yeah. So I would defer to him, and we had this thing. Steve, it was like we had to develop this thing somehow when we would play, where we would, if I played something, he would listen for a second and he would start to play when we played together. And it wasn't the same. It was this complementary thing. It was like he was playing percussion, and we had percussion. So it was this thing where we would play and we'd always come up with parts. And sometimes he would start a fill and look at me and I'd know it was coming, and I would end the fill. Or I would start a fill, look at him. He'd end, I'd start. It was back and forth, and it was smooth, but not always smooth. Sometimes I remember he would yell, "What the hell are you thinking?" And I'd be like, "What? What did I do?" What the you're playing.
Sometimes I had to reprimand him.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I had to reprimand him. That's all. I can't say it any other way. That's the only other way I can't put it any other way. He needed to reprimand him sometimes.
He'd say things like, there are two of us here.
So I said, like I had to reprimand him one night, say, Rick, could you show me how to do that? I mean,
no, it reminds me when you guys.
We would learn each other. We would put, it was fun just playing together, man.
Yeah.
I love the way you played, man.
It reminds me of when you guys did one of the last Yamaha Groove nights. You guys played The Letter together at the end of the night. Do you remember that? And you had, it was like a contest to see who could play the softest. I remember you were
who could play the quietest.
The quietest,
so playing The Letter, which is two drummers, and he goes, we start to walk out, and he goes like this. He picks up brushes. He goes, I'm gonna let's not try to overdo this. Let's just, let's try to keep it mellow. Yeah, great, okay. And then he goes, brushes. So I get to the drums and I pull up brushes. And he says, I'm gonna play soft, really soft. And I said, I'm gonna play softer than you. He goes, no, I'm gonna play softer than you. And then at one point he was like, I'm not gonna play. The band, it's like the finale, it's a closer, and the band's
the last song.
And they hear I remember looking at the horns, they're chomping at the bit. Got Marotta and Gadd playing.
Tell you something, shit was
burning. But then I looked.
Shit was on fire.
And I looked back, and it really did turn out to be. Steve was doing this brush thing, and I was doing this thing, and it was like, here we were all over again, like when we were kids. We were just like coming up with stuff, and it was really good. It was really good. But it was scary because I know him so well. When he goes, I'm going to play quieter than you. No, I'm going to play. And then he is not going to play. He goes, I'm going to be so quiet. No one's going to hear me. Steve, I got to tell you something real quick that I forgot. Jerry, my brother Jerry's been going through all of these tapes and stuff that he found somewhere that he took from either the apartment or my parents' house, and he pulls up and he sent it to David and I. It's a reel to reel of the gig. Me, Stu Woods, the night you were there, where Marvin Stamm got up and played.
Really?
Yeah. So he's baking those tapes. I don't even know where he found them, but because of being stuck in his house, he's been doing a lot of cleaning, going through stuff and baking tapes.
Oh, we should check that out, man.
I'd be great to, because it can't be as good as you said it was. I think I'm going to have him burn it.
No, it was great, man. We should check it out. We should check it out. Hey, listen, I'm going to let you guys finish up.
We're all done. I think
you're done?
How long? What time is it?
Let's go a little longer, Rick. Let's go a little longer.
I've got to make dinner. There's no one. I'm on my own. I got to cook dinner for myself.
It's only 4 o'clock. You can wait a little while longer. All right.
Okay, but it's going to be boring as hell when Steve leaves, because this is what he likes to do. He likes to step in. You know what he used to do?
He's a disruptor.
Let me say one other thing, okay? When we were first coming up in New York, and I was kind of getting pretty established as a studio player, Steve wanted to come to town, and you're gunslingers, and everybody has their little ploy that they do. So I'd be at Record Plant or someplace doing a session, and all of a sudden Steve would walk in with his stuff, his cymbals, snare drum, and sticks, and he'd walk in and go, "Oh, hey, hi guys. Oh, I must be in the wrong studio. Who's on drums here? Oh, is that Rick Marotta? Hey, yeah, I'm Steve Gadd. Rick and I are really good friends." So, by the way, for all you young drummers out there, you want to start getting work. There's a really good way to do it. Pretend that you walked into the wrong studio when someone else is doing a session. You're going to get their sessions pretty soon. By the way, I used to do it to him too. When he
Works like a charm.
I'd walk in the cinema, I go, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm in
By the way, I used to do it to me. I never knew how to do that until I saw him do it. And the truth is, neither one of us ever did that. I would go to sessions though. I went and saw him play at, remember when you were doing Jerry LaCroix?
Yeah,
I came and heard that, that's after we first met.
that was a big bonding for us. Anyway, it's great to see you. Jack Douglas is asking if we remember Donald McDonald. Yeah, I remember Donald McDonald. But you used to play in a band, White Elephant. Didn't you play in White Elephant?
With Donald, yeah.
With Donald, right? Yeah. What a band that was. Dave Matthews. Did Dave Matthews do the arrangements to that?
No, Mike Maneri.
Mike Maneri.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah, Donald McDonald.
All right, Rick, I'll talk to you later, man.
Okay, man. Great to see you. Love you all. Talk to you.
Steve.
All right, I'll see you
Thanks
later.
thanks for jumping in. Talk to you later.
The much older Steve Gadd is leaving right now.
John, I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, Steve.
See you. Thanks for
buddy.
jumping in.
Oh,
Okay, that was pretty funny. Do you want to call Steve and tell him how to sign off? I'm not sure he knows.
no, he knows. I taught him earlier how to do it.
Well, look, I can't follow that. I think that we should
Yes, there's nothing to follow. I think that was a nice little mid segment. We got hours more to go here, Rick. Hours to go.
We got second.
We haven't even got to popcorn yet.
I'm gonna have to. I'm
hot
gonna have
butter.
to pee soon.
You're gonna have to what?
We're gonna have to. Oh, popcorn.
Popcorn. Tell that story. That's a great story. You got to tell that story.
Popcorn. I don't know if anybody here knows that.
Well, I was going to say people should Google that song. The band was called Hot Butter, right?
Yep.
Yep. And the song was called Popcorn.
It was two brothers. It was two brothers in New York. I wish I could remember their names now. I'm so sorry. I don't remember. One was an engineer and one was kind of like a synth player. And then Joe Mack was a bass player who I had done, excuse me, a lot of stuff with Jim Croce, actually, Joe Mack. And it was a great bass player. And so we went in and just three of us. I think they had it all. They had already recorded the synth part. And back then there weren't really synths, so it was way ahead of its time. And it was this.
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
I remember it.
Joe Mack and I are there, and we're going like, "What the hell is this?" And I had just learned how to play a samba. I was just learning this South American samba sort of stuff. And Joe Mack looks at me, and he was a total professional, but he was like old school professional. He was an older guy, really nice guy, and really good player. And he'd write the stuff, he'd play it, and he was really good, but not outside the box thinker that I can remember. And I said to him, and he looked at me, he goes, "Rick, what are we going to do on this? What do you want to do?" And I said, "What if we play a samba?" That was it. We played a samba. But and I mean, to me, that was a samba. Basically, it was a marching, kind of like my introduction to samba, like a
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And it became a #1 hit flash in the pan. There wasn't a real band. They put out a record called Popcorn by Hot Butter, and
Instrumental.
total instrumental, yeah. And
Yep.
and it was three of us. And I always think to myself, I made $60 or $90 for the session, and it sold, I don't know how many millions. It was in movies. It's been everywhere. And I just think I don't want to get on a high horse about it, but I think the inequities of the business are that guys that worked on stuff like that, right now, there are a lot of guys that can't pay their mortgages or can't pay their rent. There's really good players, and it really bothers me. I'm so far, I'm lucky. I moved around a bit, and I didn't put all my eggs in the recording studio basket.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of guys that did, and that bothers me. It bothers me that there's no looking back. Nobody looks back and says, wait a second, we have to take care of these guys that took care of us for all these years.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. We've talked about it, and you, Steve, Chris, Andy, made so many, so many guys. Jeff, all the guys, all these records.
Jeff, JR, there's one after another, after another, after another, after another. I'm not crying the blues about myself. I'm saying there's guitar players, bass players.
Yep.
Anthony Jackson, when he did that song Money, he played bass on Money. That, to me, the song is Money, 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 and it's don't.
That's him. Yeah.
Well, that's the song.
Yeah.
Those guys appreciated it so much, said, you're getting writing credit on this song. I don't know how much of a writing credit he got on it, but I do know that I always felt good about them for that one reason. And I just thought that was deserved.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Well, we got a question from a little while ago, and I'm assuming I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And I see this man often on these chats, and he's a great guy. I don't know him personally, but his name is Laser Brendan. Thinking that might not be his birth name. It could be though. But he's asking, and you and I were just the other day talking about Canasonic drum heads, and he's asking, do you have any stories about using them on your snare? And matter of fact, you do, I think.
We just talked about that. So
I can think of one song.
On Peg, I had gotten this Paul Kimbrough might be. Is Paul Kimbrough on this thing, or did he go?
He's probably still here. I definitely saw him earlier.
I had gotten a snare drum from Frank Ippolito, and Frank told me that I bought the snare drum, and it was a Slingerland snare drum, and he told me that it was Buddy Rich's drum, and Frank, who had the Pro Drum Shop in New York, he was friends with all those guys. He was really good friends. He was old school. Grady Tate and Buddy Rich and all those guys. The same.
All those guys, yeah.
So he said, Rick, I got this great snare drum here, and it's Buddy's snare drum. And I said, oh, great. Yeah, let's see it. And I hit it. I really liked it. I brought it home, and that was when I used to tinker around with drums. When I originally, you couldn't get two-headed 8 or 10-inch tom-toms, and I put them on my drums. Then I put them on Steve's drums. Then he went to Japan, and he came back with the drums. So anyway, I got the drum from and I think Paul was working there at the time. I'm not sure. I think Paul Kimbrough was working.
He's still here, he says. Yep. Still watching.
So I took the drum home, and like an idiot, I didn't like the throws, the snare throws, but I had been using Ludwig drums earlier on, and I had a Ludwig snare, and I got the Ludwig snares, the strainers, and I attached those to the drum. I put in new holes, I drilled it, and I took it apart, and I put, I think, a Diplomat head on the bottom if they had them at the time, and I put a Panasonic head on the top. And the drum had a very unique sound. So I'm doing a Steely Dan album, and I walk in, and I'm almost positive I brought that drum with the Panasonic head on it. And as I was playing, we're doing Peg. And Walter Becker, it was at A&R 7th Avenue in New York. And Walter Becker was pacing behind me as we're playing, running down that track or whatever track we were playing at. Back and forth. And I'm playing, and I turn on, Walter, what's going on? He goes, I don't know about that snare drum. And I think he might have heard me say to somebody, I brought the snare drum that I've been futzing with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I turned to him and I went, Walter, it sounds really good. And I remember Elliot Shiner said, Walter, calm down. Snare sounds great. And Roger, I don't think, said anything. And that was good. But that's where I used, in answer to your question, it was on that session.
And what
I
session do you use it on?
That drum for probably 30 years. It's been, if anybody out there sees a gray or white, is it a pearl? What was that drum?
Yeah, like a marine pearl kind of. Yeah.
That has Ludwig throws on it. That's my drum, and I would love to get it back someday. I've been looking for that drum for ever. It disappeared from my trap case.
Well, maybe seriously somebody will
walked off to.
Yeah. Well, maybe somebody will see this and know where it went.
Or maybe someone accidentally found it in their case and they might say, hey, Rick, I think I have your drum.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Anyway, that's it. But I didn't use Panasonic heads all the time because they were a very dead head. I could get them to crack. And sometimes I was getting things. I think Elliot liked it because it cracked, but it wasn't too high pitched.
Right.
So
I remember them being very muffled sounding, which was the sound in those days.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to dampen the head so much.
Yeah. Plus, Elliot Shiner was engineering, and very difficult to make to sound bad with Elliot doing the engineering. He was really good at it. As was Jay Messina, as Jack Douglas, all those guys, Shelly Yakis. We were in New York at the time. They were all great. They all knew. And they didn't have a lot to work with. They had great consoles, but the drums, a lot of times, we didn't have like LA, you could bring your own drums. You went in and they were basically drums that you would jury rig.
Going to talk about a couple more quick songs that you and I talk about all the time that I'm assuming a lot of these guys will know, but maybe they won't know, that you played on that are, I think, people talk about Peg, of course. And
Charlie Drayton just said, I didn't take that drum. Charlie might know where it is, though.
Yeah, he might. If Charlie puts the word out. I saw Charlie was watching earlier. But you played on the first Steely Dan song you played on was Don't Take Me Alive, correct?
That was the first one that,
Moral Scam?
Yeah, might have been. It was one of the first ones that I heard released, but I played on a bunch back then, really a lot of them.
Right.
I don't know whether they came out or where they were, but yeah, Don't Take Me Alive, yeah.
Don't Take Me Alive, because that to me is, anybody who doesn't know that song, you got to listen to it. I mean, it's just it's a great song, but it's a great representation of Rick's playing and other songs that in fact, I have to remind, so people watching know this, I have to often remind Rick of this song because he often forgets about it, but it's a Boz Scaggs song called Breakdown Dead Ahead. That's just a great. I tried to get the Marotta brothers, the band that Rick has on the Vineyard every summer, which maybe might even happen this year, maybe. But the last 3 years, Rick's had a band on the Vineyard with his brother Jerry on drums, Joanne Cassidy, who I think might still be watching, is the singer, and John Zeman on guitar, Zoe Zeman on bass, a variety of keyboard players in and out.
That's kind of, no.
No, you've got
Sam.
yeah, Sam Rothberg is the steady guy now. Sorry, yeah, he's the
So-
regular guy.
That's a big drag. This year, I went back to playing a lot more. Stanley and I are back doing gigs with Ronan. We went to Japan. We did a live album. I wish we had time to do more stuff. And we did the live record. As a matter of fact, I was just listening to some of the stuff here and really enjoyed it. I mean, it was great to get back with Stanley and with Waddy Wachtel and Dan Dugmore and with the Marotta Brothers band. I mean, that band is so much fun. And Joanne Cassidy is just scary good as a singer. And I'm on Martha's Vineyard where you go, well, I didn't even know who she was, honestly. And I thought I knew everybody here, and I was skeptical.
Yeah.
She is unbelievable. And I miss that band because we had so much fun. We moved from a place called Lola's last year to the PA Club, the Portuguese America Club here. And I'm just enjoying it, and so much more. Back to playing, and I've been playing a lot more. And I remember I was in Japan, and Steve, so Danny, the guy that works for Yamaha, fantastic. Greg Crane from Yamaha here in the States set it up with Danny in Japan to take care of me, and he takes care of Steve when Steve goes to Japan, and he was unbelievably good. I mean, the drums were perfect, and he was right there next to me, and so Steve sends me, and I'm playing with Ronan in Japan, and Steve texts me. He goes, "Danny's there, telling me you're tearing it up in Japan," and I write it back to Steve. I text him. I said, "Oh man, I'm really nervous. It's humbling. I feel rusty." And Steve writes me back, "Yeah, well, you got to practice more than twice a year."
He's got I tell you that. I tell you that too.
So
As a
anyway,
representative.
that's been a lot of fun, and I really miss. And I know all the guys here. It's funny. I know that Chris. I know that Dave. I know that I see John Ferraro is on here. I know that everybody is missing playing. I mean,
Yeah.
These guys do it more than I do. I think they might be. They might be doing other stuff. Like I think I saw that John was doing an outdoor gig or something. I'm not sure.
John Zeman. Yeah, it would take more than coronavirus to stop John Zeman.
Well, no, not John. John Ferraro.
John Ferraro. Oh, I've seen John doing outdoor gigs. Yeah, John Ferraro.
And John Zeman is. I'm scared for John. I got to be worried. John is our guitar player, and he's out playing on somebody. He's doing a gig. If somebody said, "Let's go play right now," but guys like Nick Vincent, I've just seen. And Nick's hanging around here too. I mean, he plays. He's been playing for years with all these great guys, and he's with Chucky Wise, and Chucky and whatever his name. It was Chucky and the Goddamn Liars when I originally produced him, but they really, we all miss it. It's really a drag. It's really a drag.
And you know my band, Rick.
Oh, here we go. I think it's time. It's getting dark. It's getting dark.
I was just going to say I miss it too. Should we tell everybody what you call my band? I think they'll get a kick out of it.
Strep throat audio. What did I call it?
Grand strep throat audio. Anyway, no, you're absolutely right though. No, it's it's a tough time, I think, in a lot of ways, just mentally for people that are just used to being out there doing it. And yeah, it's just it's such an odd time in many ways. David Abraziz from the band Pearl Jam many years ago is saying, I'm finally getting around to reading some of the manuals of my gear, which is a good point. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
a lot of, yeah. I figured out my Zoom camera.
I'm very lucky. I'm here, for anybody we're going to go soon. I think but I love doing this. And maybe we should do it again another time if people want to talk. And I'd love to have Steve back because it's so much better when we're talking all of us together. But I am so empathetic. I'm so empathetic to all of these people that are going through this right now. I just spent 10 horrifying weeks in Miami Beach. I couldn't get out, and it was I won't tell you the whole story of how I ended up being there, but I ended up in Miami, and my good friend John Hannon, who's probably my closest friend, who's got my back, he said, I have a place there that I just rented out for the first time ever. And John said, go to my place. Just don't come to New York. I was on my way to New York. I canceled the flight the day before. Go to my place. I went to his place on 59th Street, right on the beach. It couldn't have been, it's a penthouse. It's an unbelievable place. And they shut everything down 2 days later in Miami. And it was so scary. And you couldn't do anything. I would literally leave the condo probably once a day to walk for couple of miles, 2.5 miles on the boardwalk, which is the only thing you could do. Everything was shut down. And I feel your pain. Everybody that's going through this, I feel it with you. And I hope that we get out of it. And I hope everybody stays safe. And it's not all fun and games. And I do understand all you fellow musicians out there and all you people that want to hear live music. I'm with you, and we're all hoping this thing ends. But it was harrowing, and I'm so incredibly happy. I hitched a ride on a friend of mine's private jet coming back to the vineyard. I ended up waiting a couple of weeks for him. He told me, look, I'm coming back down there, and he has a place on the vineyard in Miami, and I just didn't even want to get on an airplane. And this is a fearful time, and with all the other crazy shit that's going on, I just want to say I hope everybody stays safe, and that hopefully we'll have live music here on the vineyard again soon, and live music everywhere, and you guys will be able to come, and I'll be able to go see other people play.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can socially distance and hang next week.
Yeah. But when you and I socially distance, I'd like you to be at the end of my driveway with a
I will, with my mask too, to protect me.
We should let these people all get back to their lives.
All right, I'm going to end the stream, but let's you and I will say goodbye in the room offline. So I'm going to end the live stream. But thanks everybody for watching, and
thanks everybody for watching. And I hope we do this again sometime. And if anybody has anything, if I offended anyone or if I left anybody feeling like they were left out, I'm so sorry. But I respect you all, and I'm so glad to see some of my old friends on here. For me, this was like a social visit that I haven't had in a long time, and I'm really glad to have done it.
That's great. Thanks, Rick. All right. Well, and we will do this again, you and me, and we won't let Steve, jump in.
Steve back. I want Steve back. That was a treat. I love that guy so much.
Me too. All right. Well, hang tight. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.